Back to the pandemic now and the race to keep the pace of vaccinations ahead of a rise in new COVID infections. Nearly 17% of the U.S. population has been fully vaccinated, but as Dr. Fauci told me a short time ago, there are still challenges. We just reported the loss of 15 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Doctor, what's the result of that? What's the trickle down of that kind of loss?
Well, fortunately, that is not going to interfere with the timeline that J&J promised to get the number of vaccines, the 100 million vaccines by the end of May to us. Importantly, none of the doses that have already been distributed to people, the J&J doses, have been part of that issue and that problem. It was an example, of checks and balances working.
Let's talk about where we are right now. We're watching new infections climb. We're watching vaccinations climb as well. Where do these lines go? Where does this all end?
Well, it ends, I hope, and I feel reasonably confident, Lester, that it's going to end with the vaccine winning that race. Indeed, we're concerned that we plateaued at a high level, an unacceptably high level. Last count was 60,000 new infections in a single day yesterday. At the same time, we're vaccinating over 3 million people per day. Yesterday, it was 3.3 million people. So the vaccine program is moving along very smoothly. If we keep getting people vaccinated and don't pull back on the mitigation methods, namely the public health guidelines that we talk about, that we won't see that surge. But it's going to be important. We can't claim victory prematurely.
You're still talking about mitigation. We're watching mask mandates have been lifted and air travel is up. Restaurants and bars are filling up again. People are going to baseball games. You watch that happen right now. Do you feel like you're not being heard? Your warnings are not being heard?
Lester, it's understandable why people want to do that. We have been restricted in our activities for a considerable period of time. And everybody, including myself, has some degree of COVID-19 fatigue. But the thing we try and emphasize is that this will end. We need to hold out just a bit longer and give vaccines a chance to really get the upper hand in this. And I'll guarantee as we get into the late spring and the early summer, you're going to see a return to gradual degree of normality that everyone is hoping for. But we don't want to do it prematurely. We don't want to pull back on all the measures when we see a very high plateau of daily infections. That's the thing that concerns me and many other public health officials.
Our conversation just a little while ago, Dr. Fauci is hopeful vaccinations will be approved for 12 to 15-year-olds by the start of the next school year in the fall. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.